The reading this morning is Faith and Belief by the Reverend Jackie Clement. Last summer, my husband John and I were canoeing in New Hampshire. At the end of the trip around the lake, I climbed out of the canoe first, had 1 foot in the lake and 1 foot in the canoe. That's when things went wrong. While taking my foot out of the canoe, I caught my heel on the edge. Losing my balance, I instinctively reached for the first solid thing within my grasp, the canoe. There are times when grabbing on to what appears most solid and stable is exactly the wrong thing to do. When I resurfaced, I saw my husband sitting in 1.5 feet of water, fishing for his glasses at the lake bottom. In my attempt to save myself, I took an innocent bystander down as well. I tell this story not to demonstrate my lack of boating experience, but to say that I understand the emotional impetus to grab onto what seems the most stable and solid when the world is ripping us off our feet. In religious terms, we might say we are driven to hold ever more tightly to our beliefs when we are under stress. Like grabbing a canoe for stability, it is not our belief that we need to hold on to, but our faith. Though the two are often taken to mean the same thing, there's a subtle and critical difference. Faith is a deep-seated confidence, vital to our very existence. Belief is only what we think is true, though we wouldn't stake our lives on it. Faith leaves room for mystery. Belief does not. As Albert Einstein in his personal credo wrote, the most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mysterious. Sometimes what seems most solid and stable is only an illusion of stability. Things that appear more ethereal, that may seem to be the toughest to grasp, are in fact the most stable and secure. Love, faith, and community may seem intangible ideals, but if nurtured, they can serve as the very bedrock of our lives. Beliefs can fall away, but the thing that seems most insubstantial, perhaps because they can be the hardest to come by, are the greatest worth and provide the steadiest base. Love the Leanne Rimes song, I Hope You'll Dance. I often suggest it for baby dedications, either to be read or played. The line that always brings me to tears and gives me goose pimple is, I hope you'll give faith a fighting chance. I have spent my life giving faith a fighting chance. What once was a shaky belief in an anthropomorphic deity, all-powerful, all-knowing, who was always punishing me for disappointing him, has grown into a strong faith in the concept of Ubuntu, that, as Archbishop Tutu explains, my humanity is bound up in yours. My life is bound up in your life. Even in times of great fear or anger, I am always called to remember that my hope, my survival, my justice, my worth and dignity is intimately and inextricably tied to yours and to that of the world. I have great faith in this bundle, even though it's somewhat amorphous. This faith moves me to try to figure out, how can we repair the breaches and take down the barriers that prevent us from feeling bound together? I so appreciate Reverend Jackie Clement's clarity on the difference between faith and belief. Faith, she writes, is a deeply seated confidence, vital to our very existence. It leaves room for mystery. Belief does not. Rather, belief is only what we think is true, though we wouldn't stake our lives on it. Beliefs can fall away, like the belief in an all-powerful, all-knowing, ever-present God, or the belief that only good things happen to good people, or the belief that there is a heaven. Let's explore this difference for a moment. I believe in the goodness of human nature, that people are born basically decent. What this means to me is that most people are born with the capacity to treat their fellow human beings with respect. That most people don't want to hurt others. That most people can figure out what is right and what is wrong. And yet, if I'm honest with myself, if I look at all the people nowadays who are showing no empathy for their fellow human beings, who are allowing fear to dictate their actions and thoughts, who cheer the removal of trans people from the military, vilify immigrants, applaud the restrictions on women's right to control their own body, profit from the misery of others. When I see those who, for greed and power, manipulate the markets, manipulate trade, traffic children, make legal decisions that negatively impact the civil rights of all of us. If I look seriously at society today, I think my belief in the goodness of human nature is like stepping on the edge of a rocky boat and trying to get off without ending up in the lake. But I have faith in community. Faith in the power of community to transform loneliness into companionship, hopelessness into optimism, pain into healing. I have faith that being in community can help those of us who struggle with empathy and judgment learn how to be compassionate. Those who are challenged by selfishness learn how to give. Community can facilitate those of us who find connecting difficult to build lasting bonds. You see, when we're in community, we are called to enhance the image of the whole. We have examples and mentors we want to emulate. We are willing to do more than we might otherwise to help make people whole, to support their thriving. There's something mysterious about the power of community that taps into primal goodness that being alone does not always allow. Now, I can't pretend that the power of community cannot be used for evil. We have seen in history the destructiveness of community during the Holocaust. We have seen the decimation of whole indigenous tribes during colonization. We have seen the violence of community during Jim Crow, when the lynching of Black people and the destruction of Black communities was condoned by a large segment of Southern communities. We see the insidious nature of community in the followers of our administration, the proponents of Putin, the white supremacists and militia groups. We see it in those groups organizing to limit access to voting and passing laws to overturn elections, and those who lobby for the end of DEI and trans rights. The power of community can be used to harm as well as heal. But I have faith in communities such as ours to transform people into their best selves. Let me give you another example. I have faith in the idea of grace. Now, grace is an unearned, unplanned blessing or challenge that enhances my experience of connection to what is holy, sacred, divine. Grace happens often when we most need it, and all we have to do is accept it. Grace is a mysterious thing that I find often happens when I am at my most vulnerable. A friend calling out of the blue to check on me when I'm feeling lost and alone. A compliment about something I've done when I feel like I've failed. A gift of money from my neighbor to help support those who are struggling with food insecurity just when I ran out of food cards. A hug from Miriam or Lily Bridger when I'm exhausted and feeling disconnected from my body. But grace doesn't only happen through human contact. Grace is seeing a beautiful sunset after days of gloom. It is the butterflies circling or the birds taking flight, signaling the spirit of a dead loved one. It is the feeling of being safe and held while floating in the ocean. However, I believe, as Unitarian minister Theodore Parker said, the arc of the universe is long and it bends towards justice. Until recently, I might have said this was a statement of faith, a deeply seated confidence. I have worked hard to try to help bend the arc of justice, the arc of the universe towards justice, and worked with and am inspired by the work of so many people here to create a more just world. And yet, since the deliberate dismantling of the Voting Rights Act, after the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, after all the removal of migrants to camps in other countries without due process, after the stripping of female and Black military officers of their rank and command, after the attempt to silence anyone who protests the actions of the Israeli government towards Gaza, I wouldn't stake my life on justice winning. In what do you have faith? What keeps you grounded when the floodwaters rise and you feel helpless or hopeless, afraid or discouraged? Family? Is it faith in yourself to overcome any obstacle, any challenge you may face? Is it a deeply seated confidence in the balance of the universe? One of the gifts and challenges of Unitarian Universalism is that we have no creed, no specific lists of belief everyone must adhere to in order to belong. Instead, we covenant around 8 principles and 6 values. Because some of you are new to Unitarian Universalism, I want to list those principles and values and try to pay attention. I know they're long. The principles are the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in our human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, and journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build diverse, multicultural, beloved community. Now, our values are much simpler: interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. Now, if you listen to those lists, you probably notice that the principles and values are statements of how we are going to be with one another and what we will lift up to the world, not a statement of faith or belief. Honoring the inherent worth and dignity of every person will only get you so far when you're watching a teenage girl have her face pressed into the pavement while her mom is arrested by ICE. Justice and equity are rocky foundations when you're going through chemotherapy. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all sounds hollow as we witness the devastation of the continued war in Ukraine. So I ask again, in what do you have faith? A deeply seated confidence. If it's like me, community, then how does community help you when you need someone to pull you off the floor, push you out of bed? How does community support you when you feel disappointed in the world and can't see the good in anything? How do you line up support within your community so when you need it, it's there? What is your responsibility to this community in which you have faith? One of the things I love about our faith is that faith can grow and change as we experience and learn more about life. I have always had faith in accepting other people, that I could accept and honor others no matter their difference. And yet, I have had to work hard and stretch in this area as my experience changed and my knowledge of other people grew. I have admitted to you that when I first met trans people, I felt very confused. I was in my 20s working at the UUA when I first met a trans woman who was a Unitarian Universalist minister. I remember exactly why I was confused. You see, I have always believed that we were born as we were supposed to be born and didn't really have a choice in the matter. After all, I am black, born black, and can't change that, as much as Michael Jackson tried to. I didn't understand anything about what it was like to be born biologically one sex and yet know in your heart and soul that you are not your biological sex. that many of you have undergone the same growth, particularly in the area of racial justice. You have signed up by the dozens to talk about the sum of us, white poverty. You have turned up at standouts and Juneteenth celebrations. You have attended workshops and exposed yourself to Black culture through the Zion Museum. And I know that some of you still struggle with the racist culture in which we live. And yet you continue to grow in your understanding of the pervasiveness of the discrimination towards Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. And I know that some of you still struggle with the fear of being in a minority position and are angry and frustrated at being asked to change the way you see yourself in the world. Community helps us stretch. It helps us be transformed in safety, in love. This is the beauty of faith versus belief. Faith can transform us. We don't have to be perfect in our faith. We don't have to endlessly punish ourselves for falling short of someone else's standard. Beliefs are often too rigid and unyielding. You either believe it, all or nothing, or remain silent or risk being ostracized. My faith in this community enables me to learn and grow with others, to be empathetic and accepting as I'm stretched in ways that are initially uncomfortable. My faith that we are in this grand experiment called humanity together, bound to one another in our transformations, in our mistakes and triumphs, that we are not alone. In this, I have faith. Our closing hymn is in your gray hymnal, number 287, Faith of the Larger Liberty. Please rise in body or spirit and join me.